Hello there. My name is Daniel
What happened?
Kilburn with Emergency Action Planning. I'm the host of the Act ASAP podcast. And today I have the privilege of having Mark Matheson with me, who is the founder of the eCERT program. Now we might be saying, well, what on earth is eCERT? Well, we're going to find out today what it is, what it's all about, and possibly how it can help you out. So Mark, let's step back a few years or a few days or however need we have to. And why don't you give me a little background on what it was that sparked you to create the idea of the eCERT program?
Well, there was a lot of moments in my life that kind of led up to where we're at now. But back in the early days, I'm from Southern California, so we're always kind of raised to think that our world's going to end tomorrow, and lots of people are waiting for the big one to the big one to hit, and it following LA following into the ocean. But the fact of the matter is that I really got involved in disaster response from the city side, municipality side, because in 1987 the Whittier earthquake hit, and that actually was the same year that LA started organizing what we call today CERTs. So in a kind of a way, I was always part of the disaster response, the response mechanisms, or the infrastructure there as working for the city. And then, of course, as I went into my civil engineering career, I lived in, like, early in my year, I lived in Oregon when Mount St. Helens blew up. And then in my career, it seems like the cities and the county that I worked for were basically inundated by historical disasters, the floods, the typical floods, and some of the other disasters that usually will impact the West Coast.
Right. Well,
So from that, go ahead.
I yeah, I find that interesting because as I was growing up in California myself back in the late 60s, early 70s, same thing. We were ready for California to just fall off the continental shelf and make a big splash in the Pacific. So I can relate to that whole concept there. But
Right.
getting back to the natural disasters now, back then, and we're talking about 60s, 70s, even the 80s, it wasn't as big of a deal as it is nowadays. Can you, I'm thinking we're seeing them more, we're seeing more news about them all over the place, and people have
Sure.
much more of a higher threshold of seeing them happening and attempting to do something about that. So you've been doing this a long time. You've been looking into this. You got into the normal CERT program, then you've come up with the whole eCERT idea. So why don't you tell me about what that is and why you came up with it?
Well, the I started, first of all, I built a Mavis unit for the U.S. Forestry Service. We call it a Mavis unit, right? But the Forestry Service calls it as a communication networking kind of a earth station that I deployed for the U.S. Forestry Service to support the overhead teams. Well, the going from the U.S. Forestry Service to FEMA, that's not an easy, that's not a direct leap. There's different things the U.S. Forestry requires versus FEMA require. We'd like to have a lot of other services. And plus the fact that the wildland fires do not last all year. So I had this equipment that wasn't being able to use any time of the year except for the U.S. Forestry Service. So I started looking at, how it can be used for disasters, because it's a viable piece of equipment. So that's where I've got involved in the local CERT program, and then I started finding the idiosyncrasies around CERTs. One, they're sponsored by a local agency, so which creates some management issues. But the fact of the matter is that there's a demand there. There's never enough resources during a disaster. So it was just a matter of doing the work, uh, trying to find a balance between serving the people, not the cities, not the county, but serving the people who are impacted the disasters, and making it actually an affordable venture for people. And the CERT program, like the eCERT program, is a federal resource. So we're working under the same umbrella, but we basically our focus is responding to a disaster and not necessarily preparing for something that may or may not happen, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
So we were talking before earlier about this concept here, and you mentioned to me how FEMA, and you've already mentioned FEMA, they spend upward to $400 million a year on the local CERT programs. Yeah, some of them, like you just mentioned, they don't become operational for whatever reason. So what's broken in that system and how does eCERT fix it?
Well, I mean, it's in my opinion is that the $400 million that I'm quoting is something that I read going through the research. And that is just basically is what the federal government provides city and local counties money as incentives.
Okay.
So they basically do the grants, and depending on the city and the city and county, how they'll get money from FEMA for the CERT. So that's part of how the program works. So it did work. I'm sorry, I'm not to get off course, but what was the basis of the question again? I'm sorry.
Oh, well, how does eCERT correct whatever the problem is with the system of
Yeah,
funding
I
the
wouldn't.
CERT program?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think that's what kind of threw me a little bit. The eCERT program doesn't correct it. It doesn't correct anything that the CERT does. They're independent. Their memberships don't work for the city or local. They are independent groups. So what the eCERT does is that we support them with the equipment and the tools for them to deploy outside of their jurisdiction.
Okay.
So when a neighboring county or a neighboring state has a disaster, the eCERT program basically provides them the support, the equipment, the support, and everything it is that they need to be able to deploy to that incident, which is the basis of the CERT program, but they're never able to do that because they're not provided with all the tools to safely be deployed.
Okay.
So we make sure with 1,000 members, we make sure that these members have the equipment. So all they have to do is organize or figure out how to work with them, work with each other to be dispatched, and we're providing all the resources for them to do their job. So they don't have to worry about learning how to become a CERT. They're just doing what they do best.
Okay. So it sounds like what I hear you saying is in some way, shape, or form, the eCERT program will allow those members to deploy across borders where most CERT programs are held within their community. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I mean, held in their community is a little strong. They just don't have the equipment. They
Okay.
don't have the communication to safely deploy. We don't want the eCERT members of the eCERT to be some to be something that agencies have to worry about. We're self-contained. We have our own satellite communication networks. We have our own subject matter experts. We work with the certs all the time, the eCerts all the time to make sure that they have the services they need. They need to be able to deploy. So that's why we provide them a communication as one of the first pieces of equipment we assign them. So, and we don't sell this equipment to them. The equipment, the Mavis units are part of the program. So they
Okay.
come with the program, and we maintain them. We maintain the Mavis units. We maintain the equipment. So all they have to do is make sure that they're at the rally point, and they meet the equipment at the rally point, and we go into the disaster together.
Okay. So it sounds like the individual members of your research program will literally meet up at a predetermined location, so to speak, and all their tools and supplies will be issued to them at that location. Is that correct?
Won't be issued. I wouldn't call them issues. They're just part of their service profile, because when somebody's interested in becoming an eCERT member or a membership, uh, we provide them basically an outline that we follow. And at the end of the day, they have a service profile. So they'll have a Mavis unit, and attached to that will come with a large capacity tent, or, industrial commercial grade drones, or, all the office or beds for a membership who wants to focus on medical service or office or any kind of service that the federal government recognize and can reimburse. So basically they know that the eCERT program, when they spend time out in the field, that their earnings are coming from the federal disaster side of it and not from the state. So they're there to help the victims. And like a quote that I like to use by Franklin D. Roosevelt is that the eCERT program, we don't argue about the price of a garden hose if the neighbor's house is on fire. FEMA knows how much the garden hose costs, and we just make sure that the fire is being put out, so to speak. So that is the focus. That's what we're instilling in all the members, is that we're providing all the expensive and all the expensive equipment and such to jumpstart their program, and then we show them how to be sustainable for the following year, and so
Okay.
they can build beyond their original operating budget.
Okay. So it sounds to me what I think I just heard was members of the eCERT teams are not functionally jacks of all trades. They can be subject matter experts or operate within a specific niche, so to speak, within the disaster management process.
Yeah, that would be accurate, because we're not interested in training a doctor or an accountant or a drone operator or those people how to be certs. We already know how to be an eCERT. We already know how to do it. We consolidate that. So they're they're not focused on a different skill. They're focused on their skill and how to use that skill in the field during a very critical time, during a disaster. So that's what we're doing. We're removing those type of burdens that usually will stagnate a CERT, and basically enhance the eCERT memberships to be national and deliver a specific set of equipment and services. Now, one membership might do drones, the other membership might do tents. Again, there's a series. We basically will focus on creating strike teams or task force. So there's a difference in people in the industry knows the difference, but typical civilians won't. But the fact of the matter is that that's our focus. We either have five memberships focusing on drones, or five memberships having what you said, competency and within five different skill sets. So you might want to combine a tent with drones, or I focus on the tents because tents are very important. But the fact of the matter is, you can bolt on different basic services to your service profile, and that profile is built in the initial stages of becoming a member. So by time you equipment, we already know what we need. We already know what you're going to want. So we just basically provide that service or that equipment to you, and then work with you to be dispatched.
Okay. So that sounds pretty interesting. Now I remember in our brief conversation earlier, you discussed about being involved in different types of emergencies and disasters. But the one that sort of popped up to the top was Typhoon Mawar in Guam. What was so special about that, and why is that something that's right at the top of your head?
Well, because it had 140-mile-an-hour winds, and it stripped the entire island naked. I mean, it was there was hardly any vegetation left. But the human tragedy is that, and it was for me and for others, and I went 5 weeks without power or water. and there were miles and miles of lines, gas lines, and people were basically rationing everything they can get. So even the base was having issues keeping up with the demand. The bases on Guam were having trouble keeping up with the demand. So, I mean, I walked into a store and there were like 20 people around one outlet trying to charge their phones. This is the little stuff. I mean, you know, FEMA and the state and local emergency, management systems, they're there to keep the government running, to keep things running. But there isn't really, other than the Red Cross, Red Cross, they're the ones that are catering to the people. Well, the eCERT program is focused on catering to the people who are impacted by a disaster. But yeah, Mawar was an extreme situation, and test, test, test.
Yep,
I'm
got it.
sorry, our sound cut off. So back to, I don't know at what point where sound
You were talking
died.
about basically 20 people around a plug to charge their phone, and then you sort of disappeared.
Yes, I mean, and the funny, and they charged the phone, and that was true in the sense when I was doing wildland fires too, is that the little things like charging their phones and doing calling home and all those kind of things, they go off the wayside, and I saw that time and time again. So basically, what I did with the eCERT program is I solely focused on providing services for people who need them, the little stuff. So,
Okay.
so I guess my example, or RV rolls up from the state. I doubt if anybody's going to be there. I doubt if they're going to let people use their phone to call
Okay.
home or whatever. Well, we take up that slack. We take care of that. They can use our phones, our communication. They can use, the Mavis units have wireless systems on it because they were geared and built for supporting 2,000 wildland firefighters in the remote areas. So, so the more Mavis units that are in the disaster, the better service, the more the people can be served better by having more. And with 1,000 units, I think with 1,000 units as our first step, I think it basically will make a significant difference.
Okay. So help me visualize what an eCERT deployment would be. What does it look like when that Mavis unit lands in a disaster zone?
Well, I mean, Mavis units don't, memberships don't move without a federal declaration. So they're self-deployed. We're going to get to a point where they're self-deployed. But first of all, rule of thumb is they don't deploy unless a federal declaration has been made. At that time, a oversight committee, which manages the program from the membership side, they will send out a call out. So depending on the disaster, they'll send a call out to the membership. Memberships can accept or decline whether they want to go. So if they want to dispatch, then that particular list gets sent to the program service center, which mobilizes its assets, subject matter experts. They'll organize an overhead team. So when the memberships are out there, they always have somebody in their corner supporting them. So we want to make sure that they're covered. So they know where they're going to go. The Mavis units are dispatched from a disaster deployment center where they're maintained and the equipment is maintained. Two operators from the deployment center will take the Mavis unit to the rally point, and the operators and the memberships go in the disaster area, into the community together. So, and at that point, they start setting up their services, their tent and such. So, there's not really, they're there. There are federal resources. The local and state agencies can use them or not, but they're going to be there. So they're not there to subsidize deficiencies in the state or local programs. They're there to support the victims, the people who are impacted. So
Okay.
that's what it looks like. So when you come upon a Mavis unit, you'll have a large tent, capacity tent typically. You'll have people, subject matter experts doing their services and providing services, but you also will have other services that the membership add themselves. So so that's one of those items like for instance, a charging station just for phones, with people can plug in, charge their phone, whatever, a wireless connection that they can access to talk to family and friends. So, there's a lot of things that the memberships can add to the Mavis unit. Um, and the core technology allows them to do that, and it increases their
Okay.
value to mitigating the disaster.
Well, that sounds real interesting. It sounds like it's fairly an exclusive or an enhanced type of service that's being provided by the eCERT people in the Mavis unit. Is that correct?
Hence the E at the beginning of eCERT.
Yes, the
So
E.
that's
I love
yeah,
it.
that's what because we're enhancing the program, the federal program, through technology, support, and financial assistance to jumpstart these memberships, so they can actually be activated within 30 days of their memberships. But typically, a membership will take about 90 days to go through a process before we assign a Mavis unit to them and a Mavis unit to them, and followed by a second set of disaster equipment that they've selected from a list of equipment, a list of services that we support.
Okay, so in a lot of ways, it sounds like it's an enhanced electronic unit that operates that makes communications a lot more viable, wireless connections for people. And it sounds like there's a lot of things that you could probably bolt onto it depending on the needs of the community or the people you're trying to service, so to speak.
Correct, correct. But I'm going to have to step back a little bit. It's Mavis units are more than just communication. The communication antenna, that's one thing. The satellite antenna that they all have, that's one thing. But they are a network. They are basically a mobile earth station. So they have computer workstations. They can have printers and plotters and all sorts of equipment. So there's actually a server room. I mean, there's two server room within the Mavis unit that has enterprise servers, routers, so it's just more than just communication. So there's no point to put expensive antenna on top of a Mavis unit without, making sure it has all the bells and whistles behind it to be
Okay.
able to do what we need to do. So yeah, it's just a matter of adding the enterprise equipment to the satellite and make it basically usable for anybody.
Okay.
So
So that's a lot of technology. It's a pretty broad scope of stuff that a lot of people might not gather right at the moment. But once you
yeah,
get
we
it on the
we
ground,
approximately put almost $80,000 worth of technology inside the Mavis unit. That's it. That's the core technology is about 80,000 bucks.
okay, that sounds pretty interesting if you ask me. So how does the eCERT balance their independence from the local bureaucracy while still operating with the FEMA and within the FEMA guidelines?
Well, I mean, we request the members to be the structure as 501(c)(3)s, non-government organization. Um, that provides them the protection to be independent, because even a person like me can't tell an NGO how to manage their organization. So they have that independence to say no, or not feel obligated to align themselves with any particular agency or local government. It's their own free will. So the IRS rules basically protects them from that. But beyond that, we want the memberships to be creative. We want them to um, to to tailor their organization the way they want to. Again, we give them the core technology, but if they wanted to add ATMs to their service profile, which is something that we support, but FEMA won't reimburse, we will do that. We're set up to do that for them. So we can bolt the ATMs to the Mavis unit, because during like in like in Guam, during a disaster, cash is extremely hard to access.
Mhm.
The bank that you usually bank at is probably might be destroyed, or the power's out. So there's all sorts of reasons why we encourage members to think outside the box, and if it's possible, and it benefits the mitigating the disaster, the oversight committee and the program service center gets behind it.
That's right. That makes total sense. I can relate to several incidences in Florida after hurricanes where power would be out for a week or 2 weeks. No power, no ATM machines, nothing's happening unless they've got a generator going on the side somewhere. So I can see how that can be totally beneficial to assist people there. So,
Yeah, it's the little things that make the difference. You know, when it comes to a disaster, if somebody just wants to make a phone call or needs to do something for business or whatever, they're able to do that. And that, as I think you said at one time, anything that can calm people the impact of a disaster is a good thing.
okay. So what I hear you saying and talking about, each membership is a 501c3 organization, and that
Correct.
somehow legally protects them from what I'll just briefly call bureaucratic oversight.
It legally protects them. It legally protects them from the standard. You know, it gives you a structure for them to work in, right? And because of the IRS rules, when I was doing a cert, I discovered that it allows them to that protection to be influenced by somebody else.
Okay, so
So
in other words, if I've got an eCERT team working in the county, and the county office of emergency management comes up and demands these people go do something, they can sit back and say, well, no, we're not going to do it.
nope.
Or they can ask for clarification and make a determination. They have an opportunity to pick and choose in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, they can, and but their priority is not, again, their focus will be serving the people impacted. So, if in a scenario where have to,
Okay, now
because
you're
there are
back.
federal resources, there are federal resources. So, it looks like my connection went off again,
No
but
problem.
okay, there are federal resources, so therefore they're not getting money from the state. They're not getting any kind of support. So they can choose to do that or not.
Well, that
Um,
seems fairly important to me. If somebody was choosing to become a certain membership, they might be remiss to be operating under the guidance of a local agency who just wants to put them to work to serve them.
right. I don't think it's, I mean, the eCERT is an enhanced program. So basically, we're attracting people, professionals, and we're attracting people who have high, skill sets. I mean, we're attracting all sorts of people, but the core sense is that I'm not going to have a doctor or a nurse who's working who has gone through the effort to be an eCERT membership to do traffic.
Right. That does
It's
not
not,
make this good.
you know, it's not, it doesn't compute.
Yeah.
It doesn't speak well for the program, and it's a waste of talent,
Mhm.
and I'm not going to waste talent. So
So
I'm going to put
ideally,
people,
we want the people to be working where they're best serving the community, right?
yes, sir. I mean, and that's the point. That's the point. So to make a successful or sustainable membership after 1 year, you know, they have to use the skills that their professional skills or their interest to move their program forward. And to
Okay.
me, that's the best way to do it. That doesn't mean that they're going to say no. And no, it just means that they have the right to say yes and they have the right to say no. Whereas a CERT program that's sponsored by a local or state county agency, you say no to them, you're more likely not going to have a CERT program.
Okay. Well, let's just move along here. So let's cut this to the chase here. Can you, in one sentence, tell the listeners what is the mission of eCERT for the United States of America?
Well, the eCERT program was written basically after 3 years to manage and maintain 1,000 and provide them the support service to be able to deploy anywhere.
All right, that sounds interesting. So now, if we have any listeners out there who are interested in becoming affiliated with you or finding more information, um, what would you say to them? How would you convince them to look into it deeper, and how would you convince them, or what would you tell them to look into to move that process forward?
Well, again, people who are already have a CERT background and they've gone through the process of a CERT of forming an NGO already. They can call us, contact us through our website or contact you, and then we move forward. But for those eCERT programs that are just starting out, and it could be one person has an interest, they can contact us and we'll work them through the process, and they'll have to find two other people because an NGO requires three officers. And to be able to be dispatched, you have to have six members that are willing basically to be deployed. And the
Okay.
reason why we say six members, because we don't, two members for 8 hour shifts, and the Mavis units run 24/7. So, 24/7. So they're out in the field. But typically a membership will rotate their members every 2 weeks. It's a common practice that's used in the U.S. Forestry Service that we don't have teams out in the field more than 2 weeks. We try to, but they try to. But but the fact of the matter is that's a rotation. It's a
Well, we
rotation that doesn't burn anybody out, and,
right.
and it actually helps. It helps with um, the supply chain with members going back home and going to the site. It helps the supply chain for the memberships because they can bring water and all the products that they need into the site, into a disaster zone, without having to deplete the supplies that are actually for the victims. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a way of being respectful of what's going on, but also being efficient with time.
Okay, so we're about up on our time, speaking of time, and I'm just going to let the listeners know that we're going to be doing two more episodes that are going to be covering a little more stuff. I think in the next episode, we're going to cover, let me see my notes here, how eCERT actually works. And then in the final episode, we're going to be looking at investing in resilience, some of the future plans you have for eCERT. So just so everybody knows, down below this somewhere is contact information for both you and me for people to go dig deeper into it, look at the eCERT website, find out the information that they're interested in, and to reach out to one of us and ask some questions. How's that sound, Mark?
Sounds fantastic, and thanks for inviting me on your program. So
Well,
yeah, I hope this is the beginning of extremely good thing.
I do too, and I'm happy to have you here because, believe it or not, I learned something out of it too. Not only are we getting the opportunity to share your information with other people, but it's teaching me something that I can hopefully move forward with to help even more people. And that's what we're all about. So this is Daniel with Emergency Action Planning and the Act ASAP podcast. I'm going to say goodbye, Mark.
Have a good evening, sir.
Okay, bye-bye, folks. We're out of here. Thank you for watching, and remember to like, share, and comment. Until next time, please stay informed and stay safe.